we're here with our distinguished guest. Hello, everybody. This is Pete Worden, who is now CEO of Breakthrough Prize Foundation. And we will talk about his previous career later. He had many successful career behind his shoulder.
How long is this interview?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yes.
That's not going to
Yes.
cover it.
It will not go current, but it will be very interesting to look. So we're here as a Blindness Foundation. I'm Svetlana Berdugina, and this is Jeff Kuhn. And we're very happy to have Pete here with us. And we'll go through interesting questions, I believe. So what's the first question?
Well, the first question is that the world has changed now that we see that the universe is filled with planets that are potentially habitable. It's a fantastic thing. It's happened over the last few years, and the charge for being able to make more of that, to find life in the universe, seems to have been taken up by the Breakthrough Prize Foundation, which Pete is leading. And I'm curious to know what his level of optimism is for finding life. Are we gonna go to our graves knowing that we're not alone here, and that life goes on in different ways? What's driving you? What do you think about in the middle of the night when you think about Breakthrough Prize?
Well, I should start that I've long been a enthusiast of the question of life in the universe. I grew up in the 50s and 60s as a science fiction freak, and in fact, I used to hide science fiction books in my textbooks at school. Probably you did the same.
Who was your favorite? Who's your favorite author?
Arthur C. Clarke.
And you met him?
Yes, I met Sir Arthur. But so the big question always was, you'd really like to see is there some really cool alien life someplace, and I think that's become the biggest question in science. One of the key things is it's very hard for us to figure out how life began. And I think that's, if not the fundamental question of science, it's certainly pretty close to it. And of course, part of that is where else is it? And I think these are significant questions, almost from an existential sense, that this is something we need to know as we understand our own place in the universe. I mean, if we're the only life, the only intelligent life, for as far as we can see, then that has a different set of responsibilities.
Sounds like frustrating a little bit.
Well, and I'd say right now, I don't know what the answer is. Yeah. I'd say, the best guess I'd say is 50% chance there's other life, 50% chance there isn't. And if there's other life, there's a 50% chance of that there's intelligent life. Right. But we really need to investigate that. And I think the technology that's coming along now, our ability to sample interesting places in our own solar system, our ability to detect planets around the nearest stars, including some that appear to at least have the potential for Earth-like conditions, really opens a brand new opportunity that I think will start to get answers within a decade, if not sooner.
Cool. So when you say okay, there are interesting places, what do you think will be the place, let's make a bet, what would be your preferred place to find life in the universe outside the Earth?
Well, you said outside of the Earth.
Yeah, outside the Earth, of course.
That's again a very interesting question of where else. I mean, I'd say the most likely place is Mars, and probably in the subsurface aquifers. We're pretty sure we need a fluid, probably water.
So in the solar system,
in the solar system,
breakthrough.
Well, but there's other interesting places. I mean, obviously, one of the theories is that life doesn't arise on the surface of planets; it arrives from the subsurface oceans. Yeah. So, I mean, they're obviously Enceladus and Europa are interesting. Also, there's the question of life could be transferred from elsewhere. So in that case, a place that I find very interesting is the upper atmosphere of Venus. So those are places in our solar system that look for life. And now, obviously, if there's dozens, which there appears to be, of Earth-sized planets orbiting the nearest stars, very likely that there are conditions in some of those that are very similar to early terrestrial conditions. So, if my guess right now is I always say it's useful to say 50%,
Right.
you don't know.
Yeah.
Then you're only wrong 50% of the time.
Exactly.
I believe that in the next decade, there's an equal chance of finding life in our solar system or finding evidence for life on a planet orbiting a nearby star.
I agree with this, yes. I would bet for both, basically. Yeah.
And of course, the other question, intelligence life.
Yeah.
Now, that's a much more open issue. And when we started our Breakthrough Listening program, which is a SETI effort, Yuri Milner, the sponsor, asked the people at the announcement at the Royal Society, including Martin Rees and Ann Bouillon and myself and a few others, Frank Drake. And it's interesting that all the answers about what our likelihood in the next 10 years finding intelligent life were less than 1%. And Mr. Milner's was the lowest. It was like a thousandth of a percent, he said.
He still wants to put his wealth into that
so I think this is, but of course I'm more confident we'll find some life. But if we find intelligent life, then that has to be the discovery of maybe all human history.
Right. What do you just think?
Well, I agree with what you guys are both saying, but so look, every time we've said we're special, we've been wrong, right? Ever since Copernicus, and you remember me as a graduate student, certainly, and when I was learning astronomy and astrophysics,
you were special.
Yes,
We weren't special.
No, but we
There's a lot of different
I was
meanings.
taught, and you at the University of Arizona, I think, that other planetary systems are exceedingly rare, and that the conditions to be able to have a protostellar disk evolve into planets is something that it just right, and it's completely wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And so we're at an astrobiology conference, and I hear people talk about how the conditions for life are so fine-tuned and so rare, and we can't imagine it happening elsewhere. I think that, come on, let's learn from the last 2,000 years of civilization. So when we also say, well, intelligent life is even more rare, it's got to be 50-50.
It's another 50.
It's got to be 50-50.
It's another 50, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Well, I hope you're right, and I prefer to lead some major new effort that's successful.
Yes.
But in some sense, there's a success in finding that we can't find any evidence that from, again, a philosophical standpoint, that's as significant, maybe more significant than okay, it violates thousands of years of discoveries that you find the more you know, the less special you are. But there's always a possibility that it is special.
So in other words, the point you're making is that you're going to turn this into a scientific question,
yes,
not a religious question.
Right. Yeah,
and
that's important.
Yeah, we live at this special time where you can search with enough completeness and statistical rigor.
In different ways and in different places. That's important.
Well, I think it's important to these questions are religious questions in the biggest sense of it. The word
you
is
said existential.
Yes,
existential. Yes.
And it's a that is the basis of every philosophy and religion that I know of, and science is the question.
Cosmogenic questions. Yeah,
where do we come from?
Yeah.
And there, I guess there are two in science. I mean, obviously, it's the origin and structure of the universe is one, and the other one is the origin and distribution of life.
Right. And so we should be grateful that we're at this special time when the development of technology and the convergence on these thoughts makes it possible to make it a science.
Well, we've made great progress on the first one. I mean, although it's interesting, every time we learn something, we know less than we thought.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned that there is a private funding now coming, which is led to creation of the Breakthrough Prize Foundation, and now Yuri Milner puts this significant amount of investment into Breakthrough Listen, Breakthrough Watch. So you've been serving as a governmental employee, let's say, and now you're working with a private capital, let's say. How do you think but in this very existential and cosmogenic questions, how these two parts can work together?
Well, first, it's wonderful to have the first honest job I've had in my life. All seriousness, that as an astronomer, we really are returning to a rather traditional way of doing things. That historically, these big questions were something that were funded, not so much by governments, but quite often by wealthy royalty or other things. But it's I think we're returning to an era where private funding is increasingly significant. Although I want to emphasize that these are really public-private efforts, and I think there's a role for each. The interesting thing about private funding is that it's a lot easier for an individual to put huge amounts of money at a very low probability of success. That's very hard for governments. I mean, and a good example is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. 30, 40 years ago, NASA started a program. In fact, it was based at the center that I used to run, NASA Ames, and it caused so much consternation. This is a chasing little green man. It was expensive. Why did we waste money on this? So it got stopped in the 90s, and really since then there was some private money, but not very much. But I think that Mr. Milner is incredibly visionary. As I said, that we need to look for potential alien signals in a scientifically rigorous manner, and we're just now having the instrumentation and the data handling algorithms. And his estimate was something like 1 part in 10 to the 5th that we would find intelligence signals, but it's so significant that he felt it warranted funding with $100 million US as an initial effort. So I think it's now if we find something or even something interesting, that's the time we'll turn it over to the governments.
Right. This is the game. Going back and forth.
And I think it's a synergistic effort. I mean, a good example of 19th century is living in Silicon Valley. You look above the valley and you see Mount Hamilton with Lick Observatory on it. Well, James Lick, who founded the observatory, was the richest man in San Francisco then, in the mid-19th century, and he wanted to leave a monument to himself. And the first idea was a pyramid in downtown San Francisco. The city fathers were less enthused than others.
In Las Vegas.
Right, and so they somebody said, "How about an observatory?" Well, he got to look into that and figured out that downtown San Francisco isn't the world's best place for an observatory, but some of the astronomers suggested a nearby mountaintop, and it was the first mountaintop observatory in the U.S. and one of the first in the world. But what's interesting about it is that although Lick built the telescope, and in current dollars it was like $1.5 billion telescope, the world's largest, but it was the government that built the road up to the state and local government. So it was a partnership. Yeah. Governments are good at doing things like building roads. Yeah. They might not be as good at taking a risky decision. So it's a good partnership.
That's excellent.
That is.
Yeah. So that's very good. Yes. And okay, then maybe last question is about your personal development towards this private partnership. You had a successful career as a scientist. So you made PhD in solar physics and published incredible works. Then you became a general over some years. So you had successful military career. Then you became a NASA director, and you made excellent career within NASA. And drove NASA to all the discoveries.
The consternation, I think.
Yes, towards the discoveries that we have and enjoy. So now you have this new career in your time life. So how do you see, what's the secret of that incredible development?
Well, the first secret is sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I certainly had a lot of luck and real opportunities. But I think, when I became a NASA center director, originally there was some discussion about NASA Glenn and Cleveland. I love Cleveland, but I'd much prefer to live in California. But the interesting thing in Silicon Valley is the huge number of high net worth people. And I was frustrated in some cases because that, you know, there were things I thought NASA should do, like look at interstellar probes. And we tried to do something called the 100-year
So
Starship
that started
project.
in NASA yet?
Yes, and well, but except it wasn't well received by everybody
Right.
in the government. And I was consulted fairly directly by some senior people about, you know, NASA's not interested in that. And that really inspired me to redouble my efforts to find high net worth people. And I mean, one of the nice things about Silicon Valley is I was the senior government person in the area. So after a while, I got invited to enough A-list parties, so I got to meet some of these people, the Google leadership and the other, you know, key leadership. And I found that they're all technical people. A lot of them were studying science and engineering when they were in school, and they really were very excited about this. And because these are high risk but high payoff things, began to get some real progress. And I think probably the first really big thing we did is Google and NASA co-sponsored a major quantum computing initiative, which again was a high risk but very high payoff effort. So it was sort of natural that when people started talking to me about, you know, do we go to the stars? And they're willing to fund some things, and also to look for life. I said, yes, that's for me.
That's great. Yeah.
So it is sometimes better to be lucky.
So go to the stars. That's the advice. Right. What Jeff you would say?
Sounds like it was evolutionary, not revolutionary, and it was a sort of a parallel gene transport for you that got you into each one of those.
Something like that, yes.
Okay, so thank you again very much for joining us for this short interview.
Well, thank you, and you know, best of luck with your endeavors. You know, I think that the planets, telescopes, and other things you're doing have a high probability of finding something cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so we go for stars and go for life around other stars and planets around other stars. Stay in touch with us. We'll report later.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Great.